More than 30 years ago, in 1995, a VHS cassette similar to this one arrived at a Disney theme park. A Disney employee popped it in a VCR and was confronted with these chilling images. The video shows a person with rubber gloves picking up mysterious items wrapped in foil and stored in a freezer. Using tongs, the person removes glass jars from a pot that possibly contains some sort of chemicals. On the bottom of the screen appear the words nerve gas and dead guest. That videotape, sent to Disneyland in California, grabbed the attention of the President of the United States.
There was one recent incident with which I was intimately familiar, which involved a quick and secret deployment.
I'm News 6 investigator Mike DeForest. 3 decades after that secret government response at Disneyland, I've obtained these internal FBI records that reveal never-before-disclosed details about that terrorist threat. At the same time, I've confirmed that a copy of that videotape, which was evidence in an FBI terrorism investigation, wound up at this thrift store. Unbelievably, it was discovered here by this YouTuber.
Oh, it doesn't say FBI on it, but it just has all those weird numbers.
He posted the video online, prompting internet sleuths to speculate on what the mysterious footage might be.
This is really strange, and then it just kept getting weirder and just felt very heavy and ominous.
This bizarre and frightening story begins in 1995. Authorities feared terrorists may try to attack Disneyland over the busy Easter holiday. I remember that weekend quite well. That's because at the time, I happened to be working at Disneyland.
Every day, reporters and their crews...
Back in the 1990s, while I was studying broadcast journalism at the University of Southern California, I also worked part-time at the happiest place on earth.
Welcome aboard the world-famous Jungle Cruise.
I was a Jungle Cruise skipper, navigating a boat full of visitors past animatronic hippos.
Well, look on the right.
I wore lederhosen while operating the now defunct Disneyland Skyway. And I also drove the Jolly Trolley through Mickey's Toontown. That happens to be what I was doing the week this envelope arrived at the theme park. It was addressed to Disneyland's Security Division at 1313 Harbor Boulevard in Anaheim, California. The bottom said videotape, keep magnets away. There was no return address on it. 10 postage stamps were stuck to the corner of the envelope. This photograph of the envelope is part of an FBI report that I recently obtained through a Freedom of Information Act request. The report shows the Disneyland incident was investigated by the FBI's counterterrorism section and was initially classified as a possible act of terrorism. Now keep in mind, this threat occurred in 1995. Back then, the FBI still considered terrorism to be an overseas problem. Just 3 weeks before this padded envelope showed up at Disneyland, Japanese terrorists released sarin gas in the Tokyo subway system, killing 13 people and injuring hundreds more. The nerve gas was deployed by a doomsday cult known as Aum Shinrikyo. Disneyland security officials were likely reminded of that sarin gas attack when they started watching the VHS tape. The video begins with a shot of 3 other VHS cassettes spread out on a table which is covered in a camouflage material. Lying on top of the tapes is a newspaper article from the April 1st, 1995 edition of the Orange County Register. The article, Man Charged with Spraying Irritant in Disneyland, describes how a 21-year-old allegedly made nearly 3 dozen people sick by spraying a noxious substance inside Space Mountain and a gift shop. Underneath the newspaper article, the video displays the words, "Good boy." Next, the video cuts to this shot. It shows more than 2 dozen vintage photographs. Below the photos are the words, "Dead Guest." After panning back and forth across the photos, the screen turns black, and the words "nerve gas" appear, followed by "made easy." The video then dissolves to a shot of various items placed on top of the table. They include a clock, a calendar, a jar of white powder, a plastic tray, an aluminum pot, a pair of tongs, a glass bottle, and an oil can. The video is silent. I'll let it play out now for a little bit without any commentary so you can see what happens next. After the lid is placed back on the pot, the camera pans around the table a bit more and then focuses in on the calendar. It shows Friday, April 14, which was just 2 days after the VHS cassette arrived at Disneyland security. The image of the clock displays either 9 a.m. or 9 p.m. The video then cuts to an image of these items, which the FBI says may be the liner of a thermos and the stem from a percolator coffee pot. Next, a yellow container resembling antifreeze is seen inside a refrigerator or freezer, along with several unidentified items wrapped in foil. An unknown person wearing gloves picks up one of the items and sets it back down. The video then cuts to this shot outside. At the bottom, the words, "Dead guest." This footage was recorded from a motel directly across the street from Disneyland, showing what used to be the Disneyland parking lot. The video goes black. Finally, a Spanish-language television show from the 1990s appears. It was called Cámara en Flagrante, which translates to caught on camera. Additional clips from the program also appeared at the very beginning of the VHS tape. It's unclear whether this TV show may have originally been on the VHS tape before the other footage was recorded over it. A secretary in Disneyland security department was the first person to view the video. She reportedly removed it from the VCR using Kleenex to protect any fingerprints. A Disneyland security manager viewed the video, then contacted the Anaheim Police Department, the Orange County Bomb Squad, and the FBI. But according to reports, before calling the FBI, Disneyland security made 5 copies of that videotape. Those of us working inside the theme park had no idea about the threatening video, but we were aware that something very strange was going on. In fact, we noticed things were different from the moment we drove into the Disneyland employee parking lot. As we were entering the parks for our shifts, Disney security officers asked to look inside our backpacks and bags. At the time in 1995, that was extremely unusual. It was not until after September 11th, 2001 that bag checks became routine at Disney, and it would be another 20 years before Disney and other theme parks began installing metal detectors. So security was definitely heightened that day. Inside another ride where I worked, Roger Rabbit's Cartoon Spin, security had shut down part of the queue where visitors would wait in line. But other than the added security measures, nothing unusual happened on April 14th. There certainly was no terrorist attack.
Welcome to Disneyland and Sleeping Beauty's castle.
The park opened at 8 a.m. Disney characters performed in front of the castle at noon. And as best as I can remember, the Main Street Electrical Parade rolled out at 9 o'clock that night. As it turned out, April 14th, 1995 was a rather uneventful day in American history. But just 5 days later, 5 days, things would change.
We just had some kind of explosion downtown.
On April 19th, a truck bomb exploded outside the Alfred P. Murrah Federal Building in Oklahoma City, killing 168 people and injuring hundreds more. Anti-government extremist Timothy McVeigh was eventually arrested, convicted, and executed. His accomplice, Terry Nichols, is currently serving a life sentence.
Good afternoon. First, let me say how very proud I am of the swift and decisive and determined work of law enforcement officials on this case throughout the country.
2 days after the Oklahoma City bombing, President Bill Clinton mentioned another recent terrorism investigation, which the White House confirmed was the Disneyland case.
Finally, let me say there's been a lot of activity that the public does not see, most of which I should not comment on, but let me give you one example. There was one recent incident with which I was intimately familiar, which involved a quick and secret deployment of a major United States effort of FBI and FEMA and Public Health Service and Army personnel, because we had a tip of a possible terrorist incident, which thank goodness did not materialize. But we went to the place and we were ready. We were ready to try to prevent it, and if it occurred, we were ready to respond. So we have been on top of this from the beginning.
The next day, the Baltimore Sun published an article, "Apparent Plan to Gas Disneyland During Easter Foiled." It indicated that a Japan cult was suspected in the sarin plot. But federal officials quickly disputed the report to the Los Angeles Times, denying there was a cult plot against Disneyland. Instead, federal officials called the Disneyland threat a hoax. Around the same time that mysterious video showed up, Disney officials told the FBI that the company had received 2 bomb threats. Those bomb threats were related to a movie that was being released by Disney's Miramax film studio. The movie was called Priest. Catholic organizations protested the film in part because it featured a homosexual priest. Separately, California law enforcement told the FBI that numerous bomb threats had been made around that time due to that state's passage of Proposition 187, which cracked down on illegal immigration and denied government services to undocumented migrants. Authorities also wondered if a current or former Disney employee might be responsible, since the video referred to guest, which is what Disney calls its customers. Now, I never heard any of that chatter while I was working at Disneyland, but I've always been curious about this case. Coincidentally, a guest speaker in one of my college broadcast journalism classes talked about his reporting on the Disneyland threat, and there have always been a lot of questions. At the time, newspaper reports confirmed Disneyland had received a videotape that showed a man wearing rubber gloves and mixing chemicals, but that video had not been disclosed publicly. So back in 2021, while we were still dealing with the COVID pandemic, I sent a Freedom of Information Act request to the FBI. The FBI receives thousands of such requests each year, and for security reasons, they need to thoroughly review the records before releasing them. The FBI sent me this letter saying my request could take up to 5 years. I had no choice but to wait. Yet little did I know, the video I was trying to get from the FBI had already been posted online by a YouTuber known as Dr. Rip VHS.
My name is Todd Workoven, and my hobby, I guess, is partially to find old VHS tapes from thrift stores and estate sales and stuff like that, and put them on a YouTube channel that I started.
Workoven's video collection is very eccentric. It includes this educational video explaining how to win at slot machines.
The first one is 1 coin.
And this one called Sit Down Dancing. Workoven gets most of his videos from thrift stores like this Goodwill outlet near Portland, Oregon. It was here in one of these large bins back in 2019 that Workoven says he found this VHS cassette with the name Jerry Hill written on the side. It also includes some sort of identification number and the words VHS copy of pertinent segment.
The labeling here is definitely different.
When Workoven got home, he began watching the video and discovered it was like nothing he'd ever seen before.
When I put it in, I was like, this is something very strange.
Unsure of what he had found, Workoven posted the video on his YouTube channel. It was eventually picked up by a much larger YouTube channel popular with mystery enthusiasts called Barely Sociable, where it's received more than 2 million views. Barely Sociable and other internet sleuths quickly figured out the video was likely connected to the 1995 Disneyland terror threat. They also surmised that the VHS tape found in the thrift store labeled Jerry Hill may have once belonged to an FBI agent. What was your speculation, or the sleuthers' speculation, of how this videotape from an FBI investigation ended up in your hands?
Generally, what I see in the bins, especially with old VHS tapes, is like an older person passed away, their stuff is being donated.
It appears those internet sleuths were right again. I've confirmed a former FBI agent named Jerry Hill once lived in the Portland area. A family member tells me Special Agent Hill used to work on terrorism cases like the Oklahoma City bombing. When Hill died in 2017, the family member tells me it's possible that nondescript videotape could have ended up in a box taken to Goodwill. As for my Freedom of Information Act request, the FBI just recently began turning over records to me. Those records show investigators tried to enhance this video, which may have captured the perpetrator's reflection on the metal pot. The FBI took several aerial photographs of this Anaheim office park located less than 2 miles east of Disneyland. The agency's interest in this property remains unclear. Authorities also collected DNA samples, presumably from the envelope or videocassette, although the reports I've received so far do not specify. Coincidentally, that very same year, 1995, newly emerging DNA technology was used in the prosecution of O.J. Simpson, who was later acquitted of murder. Other details of the Disneyland terrorism investigation have not yet been released. On September 25, 1996, more than a year after the probe began, the FBI was informed that the United States Attorney's Office had closed its case and was declining to prosecute due to lack of evidence. Disney officials have previously told me the company coordinates with local, state, and federal law enforcement agencies to protect its resorts. It's clear those partnerships were already being put to the test more than 30 years ago when that mysterious videotape arrived in the mail. I'm News 6 investigator Mike DeForest.